When the first people refused the invitation to come, the king sent out his servants to gather all they could find. And they went out and they found bad and good alike, and they all came to the feast. The open arms of God, welcoming all those whom he wishes to fill with his blessings. The people who refused to come said, "No, I can't come because I'm too busy. I have business to." So we are thinking in these Sundays about the place of work in our lives. And in the insert in the bulletin, you'll find it begins with the words balancing work. So there are two things we need to look at in connection with work. There is the legitimate need to work. There is the nobility of work, the need that people have to express themselves by their work, not only by earning enough to keep themselves going, but by recognizing the inherent dignity of work. The problem arises when people identify themselves with their work. Nothing matters in life except my work. We hear people sometimes saying, "I have to work." Well, I have to work in order to support my family, yes. But I have to work to fulfill an inner kind of burning need to keep myself busy. It's that which moves us away from the balance that we need to have in life. At the beginning of the Bible, we find God working. God worked for 6 days, and then he took a rest. The Sabbath is the day of rest. And in all our lives, it is so important to find that balance between the legitimate need that we have to work and avoid the temptation of identifying ourselves with our work. When we meet people frequently, we say, "What do you do?" Meaning, what kind of work do you do? We don't say to them, "Who are you?" That's something in another sphere altogether. My personal identity, the person that I am, something that I cultivate within myself and in my social life, especially with my family. Those are two separate things, and they need to be kept separate for spiritual and psychological reasons, to keep that balance in our lives. The other aspect of work is very much mentioned here, with quotations from recent popes and from the whole tradition of the church going back to the end of the 19th century, of social justice. Social justice in which work has to conform to certain moral principles. There always needs to be a sense in the workplace on the part of both management and labor, to use our modern terminology, that there is a mutual respect, mutual need, and everybody can win. You know, sometimes in the workplace and in our social setting in general, some people make a lot of money and other people just have to subsist. There needs to be a balance there as well. The equilibrium between performing and giving ourselves, selling our labor to somebody. After all, when you go to work, what happens? Somebody buys your labor and then pays you for that. And there needs to be a just exchange there. And therefore, from the beginning of the modern era, our church has always taught the right of workers to gather together, to unionize themselves, and to request in a peaceable and reasonable way to get a living wage, not a minimum wage. Nobody can live on a minimum wage. Is the obligation of employers towards workers and the obligation of workers to do the work for which they are paid. Now, there are many different views of that. There's kind of right and left. There's the economic system under which we live. There's a lot of strife. At the moment, in our whole socio-economic picture, there's a great deal of talk about inequality. Inequality whereby some people have more than enough, and there are others who have not enough to live by. In that connection, there's one group in our society that we really should give more attention to, and that is the position of women in the workplace. It is amply expressed in public ways that women very often do not receive as much pay as men for the same work, that men are prefer, and women do not have what is their just portion to take home. That's an aspect of the moral teaching of our faith about work. It isn't just all dollars and cents. It isn't all just productivity, but it's a question of what is right and just, where people receive what they should have. All of that comes out of the gospel teaching, what Jesus talks about, feast. The feast in which people are invited. They're invited to receive the blessings and the good things that God has prepared for them. But there has to be a response from our side. There has to be, in all things connected with our life, our spiritual lives. God offers us the tremendous generosity of his heart. He just doesn't dump it on us. He doesn't impose it on us. We have to reach out and respond. It's that response which we mentioned in the opening prayer of this liturgy. God found our lives in your love. Love has to be the foundation of everything in our Christian looking at the world. Love is not a word that is used much in politics or economics, but for us as Christians, as followers of Christ, love always remains the basic foundation of everything that we do. We may not talk about it in just those terms, but we ask God to make that the foundation of our lives. That's the way in which we live and work in the world. And so when we consider work and our relation to God through work, as well as our relationship with one another, there's the individual, personal dimension, each of us being able to do the work that he or she needs. And there's the social dimension in which everyone has a basically just share, a just share, not exactly equal. Total equality will never be possible in this world. Human beings are not totally and completely equal. We're not all made in the exact same way. But our rights before God and other people, that is the basis of Christian moral equality. And we pray together today that that kind of understanding of the workplace, work as an aspect of sharing in the creative work of God, as well as the creative work that is in the creative impulse that is in every human being towards work, that those things will be gathered together, will be well balanced, and that all of us together may share in that wedding feast, even in this world, which God has prepared